Zettelkasten and anxiety and some other things. Zettelkasten and anxiety and some other things. Hello, everyone. My name is Al Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church. That's my email address, or in the comments below. Now, this is part of what I think is going to turn into a playlist of just some really interesting things, kind of a casual chat, not getting too preachy here, but sharing some things with you that work very well for me that might be of benefit to you. We've had, in some of these supplemental series, we've had life lessons from the crazy Dutch farmer. We also have an ongoing playlist on the subject of fasting and diet and so on and so forth. And I chose to start this. Now, we've talked a little bit about the wonderful topic of Zettelkasten. What really is it, and how does it work? And you can see my previous video. I think there's a link below as well. You can watch a young lady talk about how she uses it in her PhD studies. So over the last couple of years, I'm doing this in 2022, beginning in the end of 2019, the world changed quite dramatically, and there was a big reason for anxiety out there. And 2020 was not too bad because there was money and things sailed through. But I said to my congregation in the end of 2020, you think 20 was bad, 21 will be much worse, as it was, and for quite a number of reasons. Now, as 21 began to approach, I noticed some things. First of all, in 20, both my wife and I effectively lost our jobs because we're in the events industry, and the events industry took a terrible pounding. Thankfully, I was able to do a couple of days a week during all that time and just keep things afloat, but it was a tough time. It's been a tough couple of years. We haven't gone backwards, but we haven't gone forwards either like we're used to. I'm sure I'm not alone. It's like our entire financial plan is like, bam, turned on its head. We were ready to complete and release a product into the marketplace. At that time, it's kind of gone on hold. I've got to throw myself into it and get that working, but it's those 2 years, man. Some other things happened as well. I realized at the beginning of 21 that anxiety was going to be a problem. What is anxiety? Well, you can call it fear, stress, whatever, but I felt this sense of being overwhelmed. We also struggled with some things in our personal lives that our congregation knows about, but it's not really that relevant for the internet audience. But they were major struggles, and they're ongoing, and thankfully those things have tapered off as well. So it was a challenge. Lost jobs, personal lives, so on. And then there is what the Apostle Paul called the care of the churches. That's just the care of a single church, but not able to be with people, hearing people that have difficulties, can't work with them, can't be face-to-face, and so on. And naturally, then you feel that maybe anxiety mounts. By the way, if I'm looking down here, that's where my software, I moved my screen today. So it's like down there, being sure that the recording is still working and so on. So there were several things that I did that have worked. I'm going to share them with you. Some of them discovered by accident, but they've functioned well. First of all, I made it a point to get up earlier. I started at 5 o'clock in the morning. I've now moved that to 4:30 and settled there. So what do I do? 4:30 in the morning, the first thing I do is I read the scriptures, and I do that for 4 Bible chapters every day at least, and I take notes as I need to do that. And we go cover to cover. I've just altered the order of my reading a little bit, and I'm improving that over time. I'll share it with you once I've worked it out. What works for me, you don't have to do it my way. But basically, I'll get through the Bible in a little less than a year and just start over. I've forgotten how many times I've done that now. It's just a wonderful exercise. And that helps me to spend some time with the Lord and get right and commit my day to Him. So that's the start of the day. Then after that, off for a run or a walk or whatever, usually a run. Now, I appreciate that's something that not everybody can do, but get some exercise. And so that has worked. But I noticed there were still some things hanging on. I would still then face my day edgy, even got to the place where, Mr. Stable was twitching. It's like, oh, this isn't good. Okay, so drop back on stimulants during the day, thinking, oh, I don't know what's going on. Now, I just happened in my feed to come across a clip, which I will find and post below, wherein Dr Peterson talks about becoming more efficient. I like Dr Peterson. He's got some good tips, But I was very surprised at what was inside the clip. He basically said and makes a case for having a high-protein breakfast. That's really interesting. Now, and that's works. He said, don't have a high-carb breakfast. Don't do cereal or toast and jam or anything like that. You want a high-protein breakfast because of the chemical things that go on, the cortisol effect and so on. Now, I don't eat a lot of those sweet things anyways. I try not to eat them. I've still got that sweet tooth. It's hard to beat down. But normally I wouldn't bother having breakfast. I wouldn't eat until midday or maybe a little bit later, or just try that one meal a day thing. But when the anxiety rises, it's like, what do I do? I kind of feel trapped. Do I go for a second run? Well, I can't do that. How do I focus? How do I concentrate? And I noticed that my focus at work was a problem. And even though I was working remotely. Now, I also used that time to teach myself a couple of new skills, one of which is paying off for sure right now in terms of real dollars and cents. And so that's good. When you've got time, ladies and gentlemen, don't just sit back. Learn something new. Push hard. That's part of that whole picture. But I was finding that I couldn't focus. So, But the high-protein breakfast in the morning really does wonders. Takes your body a bit of time to get used to. So what would be a high-protein or a high-fat breakfast? Maybe just a steak, perhaps, or maybe just a couple of eggs, which is high protein, high fat. Typically low carb. You don't want sugar, you don't want toast, you don't want jam, you don't want cereal. You definitely don't want cereal, right? Unless you just need it for calories, man, you want to avoid that as much as possible, okay? And there probably are better and worse cereals, or let's just say there are worse and very bad cereals, but you want to stay away from grains if at all possible. So that high protein breakfast, bam, settled. And I noticed that had an immediate effect. Thought that's really interesting. Do I do it every day? No. There are days I don't need to do it. What days do I not need to do it? If I'm privileged enough to go into the office, I don't need it because the distraction around me, everything in the office helps me to settle. That anxious thing goes down. You say, well, Brother Al, you shouldn't suffer from anxiety. Well, hey, listen, you have all these things hunting you down. You've just got to learn to dominate them. I don't suffer from it now. I take charge of it. I realize this is my number one enemy. It cannot rule me. I can't sit here and fret. I cannot be caught doing that. There's too much responsibility. Too many people depend on me. Are you with me? Now, the next thing, and that's related to our ongoing topic, is this business of dealing with mental chatter. Mental chatter. How many times have you had something in your mind and you thought, I can't forget this. I must not forget it. It's either a very important fact or a very important to-do or whatever. While ever you try to hold that in your mind, you will struggle with, maybe you're different than me, but I don't think too many of you are different from me. Most of the time, while you try to hold that in mind, it's going to distract you from your focus, especially if it's an important to-do, but also an important fact. You could easily get distracted. Excuse me. I get so excited talking, I don't take drinks. Do I have anything left here? Need a sip. Coffee, by the way, don't do too much of it. It can raise your anxiety levels. So it was at this time, or during this time, that I just happened across this wonderful idea of Zettelkasten. Now, what is that? A Zettel is a card, just a card, okay? I've got some little ones here. I've talked about them earlier. And a cast is a case or a box. It's basically German for cards in a box. And I began to use that approach with facts that were in my head that were continually buzzing around, especially the facts. I learned to put them on a Zettel, record them according to time and date and so on. Not so much time, just date. Record them in my own words, and mysteriously, that noise from that thing would go away, and my focus would improve. Think about that. That's really, really interesting. Now, I'm broadening the use of these now to where I'm going to use this approach for to-dos and all sorts of things. The other day I was running, and I had 2 or 3 great thoughts, and I was able to use the Zettelkasten method in my head to categorize those thoughts so they could be written down on Zettels, on cards, and that was really fascinating. Okay? Now, one of the things that happens, and why I like this approach so much, is that the individual Zettel card, let me just grab one here, the one I did this morning, and oh yeah, that's a very interesting one. The content doesn't really matter. The individual card, Zettel, may have relevance in different areas of your life. If it's a code thing, a work thing that might be something that I'm doing at work, it might be relevant to several different things. Hey, I've learned how to do this. Or hey, I need to use this different approach or this different thing. Well, if you put it in a notebook, you always have a problem because it stays in its context in the notebook. So let's say that I have a page in my notebook or a section called project number 1. Okay? I have another section called project number 2 and a third one called ongoing work. You with me here? I've got this amazing idea, this wonderful thing that will work for 1, it'll work for 2, and it'll work for ongoing. But I don't really want to record it 3 times. I think you know where I'm going with this. I think you can see the value of it. I want to record it 1 time, and I want to be able to bring it into play whenever I need it for work, for whatever. Because you see, sometimes you say, I don't ever want to forget this, but you write it down, and you kind of lie to yourself and say, yeah, as soon as I've written, it's out of my head, but I'm going to forget it anyways. I will never find it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the wonderful beauty of the Zettelkasten approach. Because what you've done is you've taken your Zettel and you've tagged it. Now, this is a theology topic. It's never going to work in a work scenario. So when I get to categorizing these, after I've done probably 1,000 of them, I think, whatever, I'm in the triple digits now, but we'll see. Once I get to categorize them, they'll be in broad categories. There'll be theology, there'll be work. Possibly there'll be theology, work 1, work 2, work 3. Who knows? I'm not sure. Maybe there's going to be theology, work, health. I don't know. But I'll be able to look at them. Now, people who use this method say review your Zettels every day. I found that to be a little bit non-productive early on. I think what you want to do is just record them, take your atomized thoughts, keep them there, and then lay them all out sometime as a project and say, aha, I know what's going on. Now, what I've also learned is I quite accidentally bought this little box. Here, bought 3 of them. And the cards are just a bit too flimsy. But what will happen will be, and I just think this is the best way, is I'm going to buy some 3x5 cardboard cards and a few boxes once I've got my categories right. Theology, work 1, work 2, health, whatever. Once I've got my categories right. And then I will transfer these over 1 at a time. They say, why would you do that? Well, every time you write it, it means more to you, okay? Now, I said in the last video that one of the advantages of writing your Zettels down and recording them is that you can know a lot about your state of mind when you recorded them. You know, how my writing style tells me what state of mind I'm in, if I'm thinking clearly, if I'm not thinking clearly. Plus, also, you can put a small artifact on a page. You can underline or circle a thing with 2 exclamation marks, saying this word is really important. That's really hard to do in a software world, truly. It's really, really difficult. It's tedious, okay? And once you start and you get in this mode, you say, oh, I really meant to look at that word, whatever it was. It was the word apostle, shaliach. It doesn't really matter, whatever the word is. And say, I really meant to look at it in this context. Okay? So these things together have produced something very interesting in myself that just might help you. Let me give them to you. Start early. Take charge of your day. Okay? Now, I believe in reading the scriptures 4 chapters every day. First thing in the morning. Commit your day to the Lord. And start. Thank God for a good night's sleep. Now, do I get up that early even if I had a bad night's sleep? The latest I ever get up at 5. Even if I get to bed at 2 in the morning, then it's a 3-hour sleep. And I might have to catch up in the middle of the day. I'm tuned to do that. Tuned to do that. Will it stay that way for the rest of my life? Probably. Who knows? I'm giving you my at this time position. Start right there. The next thing is, if you can get some exercise, that's a good thing. Take charge of your body. Why is the exercise is not only important for its own value, but it's you saying, body, I'm in charge of you today. You're not going to rule me. Very important. Finally, or the next stage, if you need it, if you're at a place of creeping anxiety or thumping anxiety, it just comes on you, it may simply be a blood sugar or blood cortisol issue, and have a look at the video below that I think will help you. It certainly helped me. I truly, truly made a big difference. And then lastly, back to our Zettelkasten approach. This chatter and this noise in your head is often made up of facts that you can simply put onto a simple Zettel, a simple card that will ultimately appear in a box in a place where you can find it again, and it will be your servant, not your master. Isn't it horrible having those nasty, gnarly little thoughts as your master? They're constantly beating you on the head. You think, oh, how am I ever going to control these things? I think it's even worth doing for some of you who wake up with a mind running out of control. Record the thoughts. I've heard that in the past, by the way. If you can wake yourself, write the things down in a notebook, and often that's enough to separate them. But sometimes they're actually good thoughts, maybe even inventions, or things that will do you well. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Al Persohn. I really, truly hope this has been a blessing to you. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, send this to your friends, send it to your enemies. If you want me to expand on this topic anymore, let me know, and I will be happy to do that. This has been the subject of Zettelkasten and anxiety and protein breakfast and more. God bless you. We will talk again soon.